You don't have to have different phones for different ages. You might have different applications or different use cases for them, but you don't need a different form factor for a young person and an old person. And what you'll find, you talked about the slogans they use. I personally haven't seen a single ad for the phone, but that's because I block ads and I barely watch television now. But in the ads, from what I understood from, I think it was Bill Snyder who wrote an article about it in InfoWorld, which is IDG. Bill Snyder used to be a shareholder of Microsoft and of Apple, and he admitted that. And he used to troll lots of open source and Linux, and I generally don't like the guy's writings because I consider him to be quite a Microsoft troll. But what he actually wrote about the phone, he wrote an article that says that Microsoft tries to convince you that their phone is for people who hate phones. Or if you don't like Android and you don't like to use your phone, well, obviously you will want to use the Microsoft phone, which is kind of a strange message to deliver, but maybe that's the only way they can try and convince people. You don't like to use your phone, well, use our phone. That's what the market is trying to get across. I suppose that's quite true that a reasonable person would not go for something like that.
I mean, looking at some of this marketing spiel that's being given off on the press release, yeah, Windows Phone 7 is designed to help people perform common tasks more easily and faster. I can access my Twitter client within one key press on Android. I can't see how Microsoft could be any faster than that with their Windows Phone 7, no matter how good they claim it to be. And it's all, I mean, from how I see it, it's all angling the Windows Phone 7 to be just like the King was supposed to be, the the greatest social networking phone ever made. And I'm quoting that directly from an advocate who tried to engage me in conversation. And we all saw how that went. And I get the impression, and this is just my opinion, but you're looking at these list of features that are missing. And it seems to me that these are missing not because Microsoft doesn't believe you don't want them, but because the whole thing's being rushed out very quickly. I can't believe that anybody within Microsoft would make the conscious decision to not have a tethering feature, not have a cut, copy, and paste feature, unless the whole product itself was being pushed out as quickly as possible, because they can see which way the market's going, and they're trying to prevent as many people going to Android or Apple as they can, and trying to get their foot in the door now. That's just my view. It beggars belief when you look at the list of features it lacks. It beggars belief why anybody would want to choose this phone. It's going back years in technology. You mentioned about sort of the new feature, the phones when they first came out. The technology was older then. Now we've had this technology for quite a while. We've had this software for quite a while. People are used to these things. So cutting them out, no matter how immature the market, the phone is no excuse, in my opinion.
I think the previous form of marketing and the modes they tried to promote was basically, if you're using Windows on a desktop, this thing will be easier because you have the start menu. At the time, it actually said start. Now it's just the Windows logo at the corner of the screen. But what they would actually try and do with, I think it was called Windows CE at the time. I'm not sure if it was called Windows Mobile, but I remember when I worked in a computer store, we sold the Palm One, and there were these iPads which only started to arrive, and the way it would be marketed was basically it's got Office in it, or it's got some version that kind of resembles Office. You see the Word and Excel and things like that. And you have the start menu and you have the familiar interface. And that's the way the company used to work with the clients, trying to convince them, well, this is what you know, and everything different will be a lot more difficult. And what they do now is really, I would say everything from the iPhone to Android, the application selection process is very similar to what Palm did, and before them used to have all kinds of things like the Newton, and that there is a whole lot of history behind these interfaces. But Microsoft basically abandoned the very strict Windows-like interface, and there is no compelling way of telling people, well, if you use Windows on a desktop, this is going to work better. They have this thing with synchronization of calendars and mail and things like that. I think they call it Active Sync, and they try to charge patents on companies that want this implemented on their phones. But again, this is like the only thing they can try and brag about, but other companies have the same functionality, and Microsoft has to supply this functionality in order to keep people using Outlook. It's not just about them trying to be kind. It's just that Microsoft wants to ensure people use Android also use Office on their desktop. So they try to make sure the things work together. And so here you have this phone that's got a kind of a different interface, a new interface. It doesn't matter if it's called Windows or if it's called Fred or something. It's some interface, and maybe it's got the Microsoft logo somewhere. It doesn't have many applications. You don't really know if it's going to exist for a long time to come. And that's one of the things you find if you look at other phone platforms. Things like the Open Moco, and you had the pre-OS is still alive, and I'm not the pre-OS. Sorry, it's called the WebOS, and it's the pre-phones. They have the pre and they have the pre 2.0 now in HP. It's still alive, but I don't think they have many users. With Microsoft, after you had these keen phones, I think people are not very confident. And it's not just about people, it's about the shops. The shops don't want to sell them. They don't want to put them on display and have the seller try to put the name of the store with the advice of, buy a Microsoft phone, because when they are not satisfied, they'll blame the store. It happened with T-Mobile and the Sidekick before. The shops don't want this kind of publicity. And in the previous time, it was mostly Verizon. Not sure if it was Verizon. I think was having to work with the kin, and now it's more like AT&T, as far as I know. Or
to be honest, the sort of the following of the Windows Phone 7's really, in my case, been more of the sort of marketing techniques, the marketing that they've tried to push onto people on the net, from everybody from the advocates on Twitter.
Yeah.
I think I found a few of those before, but I mean the thing was, and I blogged about this quite a few years ago. I very nearly didn't get a smartphone. I very nearly went back to just having a mobile phone for phone calls, and the reason why was because of a year of incredibly bad experience with Windows Mobile on a MDA mail, which unfortunately I got two of as part of a deal, one for myself, one for my wife, and that experience was so bad it virtually put me off the concept of a smartphone ever again. Luckily, somebody showed me a demo. Sorry, Roy.
I was going to say, you have also the opposite, which you kind of neglected to mention. That's the PDAs, and that's the mobile devices, which aren't phones, but they have lots of functionality. You have the iPod Touch, which I used earlier. I used somebody else's just to try and test it out and to try to see the feature. And I personally still use a Palm device to arrange things, but it doesn't do phone functionality. It does Bluetooth, but that's about it.
Well, what we'll do is we'll move on from Windows Phone 7, because I think we've given it more attention than it deserves. So I've got another few short titles here. uTorrent, the popular BitTorrent application that's currently for Windows and Mac, but very shortly coming to Linux, is getting a new feature in that it's going to allow you to have plugins for its software. So you'll be able to have third-party developers create plugins for your one of the most popular BitTorrent clients. uTorrent is closed source, I believe, and I've never personally seen what the fuss was about. I've used Transmission and Deluge on the Linux systems, and I can't see what uTorrent offers that any other one does. I don't know if you have any insight into this, Roy, but the uTorrent client.
My experience with torrent, I should say now, the first time I used torrent, I think was last year, and that was just to get legally downloaded music from. It's the same collection I actually post some songs for the show, but the reason I needed torrent is because it was 6 gigabytes of songs, and it wasn't a centralized download. It was totally legal, and a person packaged them together in 6 gigabytes. I never yet downloaded a torrent of a distribution. I thought about doing this before, but when I was on a different connection, I always worry about the ISP disconnecting me, thinking it's an infringement. So I was always very cautious, and even after I downloaded this it's a 3-part torrent, 2 gigabytes each. I didn't really want to share it because I don't really know if they have a way of knowing that it is legal. And I thought they would just see lots of traffic basically passing around a big archive of songs. Um, and this is what concerns me, and we had a discussion about it on the previous shows, is that people